Hey gamers, Maniac here with GameAccess.net doing our 8th site podcast. Okay, this week we're going to be talking about the Uncharted series as created by Naughty Dog and published by Sony. It is a PlayStation 3 exclusive, but there will be a Vita Uncharted game coming very soon, probably for the Vita's launch. So the game has just seen its third release this past November. It's released since 2007, 3 games, and one handheld game on the way. It is probably considered to be another one of the major exclusive Sony PlayStation properties, on par with Resistance or God of War. And it's got a great devoted fan base, a huge, huge multiplayer following, and a really, really, really good amount of, it's just, for me, it's just a great series of games. Now, I first became aware of Uncharted probably right around the time that the first game was being released. What was so funny about it was that it was releasing in the first Christmas after the launch of the PlayStation 3. It was 1 year after it was 2000. PlayStation launched in 2006. This relaunched in 2007. So around that time was kind of the first wave of like non-launch PlayStation games, and there were plenty of them, even some very highly anticipated games. A lot of them did not meet, the how do I put this? It did not meet the hype that was put beyond those games at that point. In particular, if I can think of two other games off the top of my head that both saw major releases and actually lukewarm reception, at best, were Lair, which was, as far as everyone was concerned, a complete failure, and Heavenly Sword, which got a lot of hype, was very highly anticipated, and when it came out, a lot of people were just cold to it. I liked Heavenly Sword, but that's neither here nor there. And Uncharted came out. Now, I'm ashamed to say that I didn't pick up Uncharted day and date. I kind of was more looking forward to games like to Heavenly Sword, actually. Uncharted was kind of under the radar for me, but as time progressed over the course of that next year, when 2008 started, I started becoming really interested in Uncharted because the reviews were getting back to me about how good this first game, Uncharted Drake's Fortune, was. And I specifically remember a lot of people talking about it at around the same time and saying how good it was. And I also remembered a lot of people talking about they wanted more content for the game. In fact, actually, there was a news article that was posted sometime not too long after the game came out, which was Naughty Dog responding to people saying, "Look, we want more content for the game. Please release more content." Meaning, like, they wanted unlockable costumes, they wanted extra skins, they wanted new outfits for Drake or the other characters, and Naughty Dog had to respond and say, unfortunately, we just can't do that. The game wasn't designed as it was for that kind of, input. We just can't patch it into the game, and we can't release it as downloadable content because the game isn't designed for that. However, you guys are welcome to use the unlockable costumes. We included plenty of fun unlockable costumes if you can earn them. You're more than welcome to, if you want more content, just continue to play the game and you'll do that. I also remember, just like with Resistance, reading a game developer's magazine post-mortem about the game. And they were talking about just what had gone into making it. And it got my interest quite a bit because I, of course, knew Naughty Dog from their previous series, of course. I believe it was Crash Bandicoot that they really got on the map for, which they had to say goodbye to when they moved publishers. And I knew a lot about them, but I didn't remember them as like the action game company. I remembered them as like the platforming game company. But I knew that they released quality games just every time. It just wasn't something. They just weren't games that, at least their early follies, just never interested me. But when I started reading the post-mortem about the development of the first Uncharted game, I started to get interested. I had just gotten a PlayStation, and I had a PlayStation for a little bit over about half a year by that point, and I was looking specifically to get an expanded collection because I'm sure, as a lot of people know, the amount of platform exclusive PlayStation 3 games when released were sparse at best. There were a lot of multi-platforms that got ported over, but to be perfectly honest, there wasn't really much incentive to buy them because of some of the major problems with the initial launch of the PlayStation 3. In particular, there was no achievements or trophy system yet, and that basically gave Xbox a huge one up because some people were just buying. In fact, to this day, my friend Twitch will only play, even if the superior version is on PlayStation 3, like let's say there's extra levels or extra maps on a PlayStation 3 version, will only play multi-platforms on the Xbox 360 because of two reasons. One, the controller, and two, the achievements. He's an achievement whore. And that's just like how the things crumbled. So there was that. But here you had a platform release that was coming out at a good time, and it was really being highly reviewed. Granted, this was before the trophies system had been released, so there was no trophy system announcement yet. So it was the last kind of major Christmas to launch without that backbone, the trophy system for the PlayStation, and there was no vibration yet on the controllers. Vibration wasn't added until later on. So you had controllers with no vibration, and you had no achievements or later on trophies. So the PlayStation 3 was basically like, don't even, people were like, don't bother with the multi-platforms, just get them on the 360. And there were not too many exclusive good games for the PlayStation 3. There was Resistance, which was considered to be at the time probably the best game for the PlayStation 3 exclusive. But there really wasn't much else. Heavenly Sword came out. That was expected to do well. It probably should have done. It was kind of short, and the reviewers didn't like it as much. I liked it just fine, but some of the reviewers didn't like it because of the length. Penny Arcade guys just wrecked it because of the length of Heavenly Sword. So that was what the times were going on. That's kind of like a little bit of background on what was going on at the times when Uncharted launched. So Uncharted launches, and I don't get it because whatever reason I just couldn't afford it at the time. It was not on my radar. It eventually got on my radar, and I asked for it for my birthday. I got it as a birthday gift from a friend, and I specifically remembered it just from start to finish. I remembered I played the demo. I thought the demo was interesting. I don't think I remembered too much. I had too much hopes because the demo level started really interestingly, but it ended really difficult. And it's just, especially some of the stuff like the cover system, which really you had to make use of. I was interested in the story, but I really liked the environments, but I didn't like the gameplay that much, and I thought it was very difficult. At least for someone who was just getting used to the control system and stuff like that. So I played the demo, but I figured, give it some more time. And sure enough, when I started playing it once I got it as a birthday gift, I was just hooked. The way the game started off before the demo levels happened was really interesting. I like the new gameplay. I like the gameplay mechanics a lot. I thought the environments were again fantastic. Better, I thought they would look better than they did in the demo. But then again, I'm sure. I'm sorry. The starting environments looked better than the environment that was in the demo. But probably it looked. I don't know. To me, it felt a lot better, and it looked a lot better seeing it in the context of the start of the game. I thought that demo level worked a lot better. It worked fine in the context of the game, but to me, it didn't work too well as a standalone. I should say it was better. It wasn't as well served as a standalone because you didn't know really what the stakes were in the context of the demo. You do know what the stakes are in the context of after the first couple of levels, and it's more interesting, I thought. So after rambling on about that, I kind of thought that the game. Well, like I said, trophies weren't yet implemented by the PlayStation people yet. In fact, they weren't even talking about it yet. the DualShock 3 had finally gotten released. So they had finally brought vibration implementation into the PlayStation 3. I think it finally started coming around right around the time that oh god, what was it? By the time Heavenly Sword came out, they did have a major release of those DualShocks. And the six axis, I ended up just completely just selling my six axis as used controllers, because by the time I ended up replacing my whole controller collection with DualShocks, I sold my six axis early ones, and so it all worked out really well. They had the unlockable content. They had the unlock. They had a. It felt to me like with some of the unlockable stuff, they assigned point values. It felt a lot like the extras that they were going for with that game was very much inspired by the Xbox 360 and what the Xbox 360 offered. They had point values, a total of 1,000 points for each, award, lots of different awards to get and stuff like that. It was tough, and there was a lot of different stuff. They were really tough. The game was hard, but it was all the more rewarding to get them, and it was pretty possible to get them. So everyone got really interested. It was a good first step. It was a great game to start off with. It could have probably been a bit more polished. Could have used things like multiplayer. A lot of people claim for that, but people were, that first game was a good first step for Naughty Dog because we got introduced to the characters, we got introduced to the environments, to the gameplay. The gameplay was really, really well polished. In fact, I remembered reading some articles, some old news articles, saying that there was a few times where Naughty Dog actually delayed the game to get the platforming just right. It was like they just needed to polish it more and more, because they ended up missing release windows just to tighten up those platforming segments just as much better. And to their credit, that was time very well spent, because as far as I'm concerned, with the platforming parts of those games, I mean, they did a fantastic job. They were just perfect. So, hats off to Naughty Dog for that. So then, I finish up the game, and I was unlocking, a whole lot of different stuff. And after unlocking a lot of difficult stuff in like one or two playthroughs, I don't unlock everything, but I just decide, you know what? I think maybe some other games had come up, and I just really didn't want to go back to it. I didn't think that there was a lot about it, but when Naughty Dog finally announced that they were going to be porting the trophy system into Uncharted, I started getting interest again, because Sony finally decided to implement an equivalent system to what the achievements were for the Xbox 360 in order to compete with Microsoft on that level. They had already answered the vibration issues with releasing the DualShock 3. Now they were going to answer the achievement system with their own system, the trophy system. That they basically were just they figured if that's what Microsoft, I guess they figured if that's what Microsoft's got and that's what they're holding over us, we'll match it. We'll provide that. And I think according to Wikipedia and a few other sources, I think the first game to ever offer a platinum trophy as patched in was Uncharted Drake's Fortune, the very first Uncharted game. And that's what got me interested in playing the game again. The downside of that was that anyone who had already gone through all the trouble to get all the awards and the achievements that they had gotten the first time around had to do it all over again, because the achievements couldn't be ported over. When you finally got it patched in, you had to do whatever. If you had already done what would have pertained to the achievement, would have earned the achievement, you had to do it again, because you couldn't carry it over from save games and stuff like that. The system wouldn't allow that. Now it doesn't matter, because the games are launching with these trophies now. But back then, that was a major, major problem, because I guess they didn't want people to have saves transferred back and forth that would allow these achievements or trophies to go. But that was a major controversy, especially given the fact that, well, let's face it, they were just porting over to a unified system what had already been awards in the first Uncharted game. So while they were adding that, that meant that you basically had to put a complete reset on your save game because you had to do it all over again for some people. For me, it wasn't as bad because um, I don't know. I like I said, I didn't play it as much, so I only got about half the achievements the first time on my save game. And sure, don't get me wrong, I probably had gotten plenty of some awards first before I got other awards, and don't get me started on those 3 times getting. I'm sorry, 5 times getting three kills with one explosion. God, I still have nightmares about that one, and I'm having nightmares about Uncharted 3's 4 kills at once. That's just been I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to get that one. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It was still the great Uncharted game. It was just improved in that respect. I also really like the technology that went into it, particularly with how they chose to tell the story. I thought Nolan North was a fantastic actor for the main character. I thought that Elena Fisher, played by Emily Rose, was a fantastic actress. Just adorable and great with playing the role. The guys that played Victor Sullivan, very very awesome. It just made for a great cast, and I don't know. I really like how they were using now. I know that full motion capture for storytelling cutscenes and stuff like that had already been done. Heck, I think if not 100%, at least 90% of Indigo Prophecies, which was released in 2005, was all motion captured and wire work and motion capture and stuff like that. So it's kind of commonplace right now, but it was, I think, a bit more interesting at the time that they chose to have the actual actors, do the motion captures. It had been done before, but it was kind of unusual. Usually they'd have separate actors do the motion captures and the voice work. Very rarely in games at that point. It had been done, but very rarely in games at that point had they done full captures for by the actual actors. I think the only games that actually did it up to that point that I can think of was The Darkness, but I don't think that came out yet. I don't think that they had actually used. I don't think that had come out yet. Well, maybe it had actually. Was The Darkness, Enter the Matrix, which, let's face it, was terrible. And that's right now all I can think of between the acting stuff. I'm sure that you guys can post comments about what were some other games that predated Uncharted. Nowadays, a lot of developers are doing it. They're having their actors. Heavenly Sword. That was the last one I was thinking of. That was full motion capture, body capture, voice capture at the same time. So while it was done, it was unusual to do it. But it worked phenomenally. It really did. Because the actors that they cast were just so good that they could handle those roles. And they did more than just, motion captured their bodies for the cutscenes and stuff like that. They did motion captures, and they later said it was like they did motion captures for full body stuff for the game captures for gameplay and stuff like that also. So it was more than just that. They later expanded it for the later games, but I'll get to those later. I thought it made for a great story, and if I could make one comment about the story of the Uncharted game, the whole plot line of the first Uncharted game was you've got a bunch of treasure seekers basically looking for El Dorado, the city of gold, this legendary lost city. So what made it so interesting was that this was something that was very much inspired by pulp serials, in the very early cinemas and stuff like that, which was also inspiring to another very similar character being Indiana Jones. Well, who could have thought that there was going to be, at the time that the first Uncharted game came out, that there was going to be a new Indiana Jones movie coming out that was going to tackle the same subject matter, which was searching for El Dorado, and do it much better than Indiana Jones did it when they finally did it. Because Indiana Jones, that last Indiana Jones movie was like, some movies that are terrible take a while for me to realize that they're terrible. I knew Indiana Jones, the fourth Indiana Jones movie, was terrible when I was watching it. Okay? I thought it was horrible watching it. Because I had already played the first Uncharted game by the time I was watching. So I knew you could do the story of El Dorado well. Because Uncharted had done it. Go figure. Just go. Yeah, I'll let you chew on that for just a few minutes. It's like, how can a game that was seriously inspired by, it's the same stuff that inspired Indiana Jones and probably also Indiana Jones, do an Indiana Jones story better than Indiana Jones did when they finally did tackle it? Explain that to me, George Lucas. That's fine if you want to. It's like, I understand that they were doing something, that George was going to say, well, we did something different. We weren't inspired by the stuff that inspired Indiana Jones. It's like, but you're doing an Indiana Jones movie. Why would you not be inspired by the stuff that you're doing Indiana Jones? They inspired Indiana Jones. It's like, you wanted to do something new, okay. You didn't want to make it stale, I get it. But you could have done it well. Uncharted did it well. That's the proof. You could tell that story and tell it well. But that's enough of my Indiana Jones bashing. Let's get back to Uncharted. Like I said, right before I started talking about playing it finally, people were clamoring for extra game content after. Particularly, they wanted extra game content in the form of unlockable skins and stuff like that for the single player campaign, because there was no multiplayer in the first Uncharted game. So what was going on was that you only had the unlockable content. You could only get the unlockable content through unlocking what was later trophies, earning the trophies, and that would allow you to unlock content based upon the point values. It kind of reminded me a little bit of an expanded version of like what the Xbox 360 did and what Resistance Fall of Man made you do, which was you had to do certain skill, you had to unlock certain things by doing certain very difficult awards, and with that you could finally play the you could finally get through the game, and you could unlock these rewards. And to me, I like rewards. I really do. I think that they've really had a major comeback ever since the God of War games came out. And from a trophy or achievement standpoint, I thought they did it well. Because I've always, trust me, I have the worst luck when it comes to games that I like. When it came down to Xbox 360 games and achievements, I could never 1,000 out of 1,000, really anything. I never. All the games I'd be interested in would all be like, they'd all have very difficult achievements or next to impossible achievements to get that you'd never get in a million years. You never could get in a million years. And here was a list of things that were doable. So there was all that. So the first Uncharted game, is a pretty good success. Got a lot of, attention for the PlayStation. And everyone is clamoring for more Uncharted after the release of the first game. And within some time, Naughty Dog finally relents and says, yes, we're working on Uncharted 2. And they say that not only are they working on Uncharted 2, but Uncharted 2 is going to feature something that wasn't in the first Uncharted game and was going to be new to the series, and that was multiplayer. They were bringing multiplayer into the Uncharted series. And on top of the announcement, they also announced that there was going to be a beta test for the Uncharted 2 multiplayer client, which was going to be given to people who picked up the game Infamous. I know I haven't talked about the game Infamous on the podcast that much, but needless to say, I liked it a lot. It's a good game. But there was that too. So they had the Infamous beta for Uncharted 2, and I think that's how I got in on it, because I remember correctly, I got in on the Uncharted beta, but I can't remember how. At least not for that. That was a while ago. It might have been because of Infamous, because I did have a copy of Infamous. It might have been because I was a initial core subscriber, and trust me, people who were that first year core subscribers got a lot of good stuff out of it. I must have gotten at least 2 or 3 free games at least for paying the $20, and I still have those games. They never took it away after I stopped subscribing. I should have renewed it. But, so there was all that. And I think that's how I got in. Either that or it was Infamous. So the beta test starts, and it's really, really positively received. As far as I remembered playing it and having a good time, too. In fact, I was enjoying it so much, I actually I pre-ordered the game. On top of that, the first trailers came out for Uncharted 2, featuring the what was, I guess you would say, the introduction to the game, which was the train sequence. And then there was also another trailer that was released that showed the Purpa for the first time in the snow. And Naughty Dog said this is intentional because we're doing snow environments this time around. We're doing new things with snow. It's going to, kind of like how we did things with water and jungle in the first game. Now we're doing it with snow. And that interested a lot of people. They thought it looked phenomenal. They wanted to know what was going on with Drake. For those of you who have played Uncharted 2, the first things they showed was that opening sequence where Drake is covered in blood. He realizes it's his blood. He's in a train, and we slowly, as it pans out, we realize that he's not in a train. He's, that's stopped. That's just stopped. He's in a train that's dangling off the side of a mountain, off a giant ravine. So that got everyone interested in just where this one is going. And then later on, we got to see introductions of the return of Victor Sullivan, of course, Sully. If I can make a comment about Sully, I think that it's kind of interesting that now I know that the first Uncharted game came out just before that whole Miracle on the Hudson thing, and then it's kind of funny that that when the plane landing on the Hudson happened, it was being piloted by a guy who was also named Sully. I don't know why that similarity. I always thought about that, but I thought that was kind of funny. Is it common? Please post a comment. I don't mean to offend anybody. I think he's a great guy, but I'm just curious. Like, is it common for pilots to be named Sully? Is this like something that Naughty Dog knew about in advance? I know it's a common nickname, of course. I've been told it's a common nickname because Sully, Sullivan, Sullenberger, it's Sully. It was also the name of the guy that John Goodman played in Monsters Incorporated. Okay, I know I guess it's a common nickname, or certainly more common than I thought it was. But is that a common nickname for pilots? Please post a comment if you know the answer to that. So Sully is coming back, and they showed this new person, Chloe Frazier, who was voiced by God, no, I can't remember that girl's name. But I loved her in Pitch Black. Yes, I liked Pitch Black. I thought it was a good movie. And oh God, who played her? I can't remember who played. Hold on. I can find out just now. Okay, I guess I can't. That's kind of funny. I can't remember who. Claudia Black. Yeah, that's it. Claudia Black. Sorry about that. Took me a few seconds to remember. So, Claudia Black was playing Chloe Frazier. And this was like kind of interesting because, again, if you think about the whole mentality about Indiana Jones or adventure serials, the hero gets a new girl every time. So a lot of people, especially me, was interested in like, oh crap, they're going to change the female lead. We really liked Elena in the first game, and it's kind of sad that that they were just going to end it there. But it's not uncommon for that kind of thing to happen. The new guy gets a new girl every time. I'm sorry, the hero gets a new girl with every movie. In this case, when the time that I think one of the third or fourth trailers came out, I think it was probably for TGS or something. I don't think it was the E3 trailer. It might have been though. When they announced, it might have even been the game conference. They showed the early portions of some of the cinematics for Level 6, and it was in Elena's introduction sequences. And everyone was like, oh, Elena's back, Elena's back. I was excited because I really liked Elena. And so that was interesting, of course. And Elena did return back. And although Chloe Frazier was certainly a love interest in the portion of the game, again, I don't want to spoil anything, at one point, Drake makes a choice between who he wants and who he wants to be with. So I thought that made for an interesting dynamic. I also am a huge fan of Valentine, who played, oh God, no, I can't remember the guy, Steve Valentine, who played one of the antagonists in Uncharted 2. Really think he's a great actor. I loved him in Crossing Jordan. And he did a game show not too long ago. Heck, I think I even remember him having a small cameo in Spider-Man 3, saying the lines, I've got a secret, it's my coffee. I mean, he can make anything seem relevant. I don't know if it's the accent or if it's his acting ability or his appearance, but he could literally make the most mundane nonsense come off as riveting. So, Valentine, I really, that's a big thumbs up to you. I really liked how you played it in Uncharted 2, and I think he was also hilarious because like now you can find the interviews that they did, and you can download the interview on PlayStation Network. They have like a couple of videos where they did a roundtable discussion. This was, of course, after the game came out, so it's not in the game, but you can watch them on the PlayStation Network, or I'm sure people have posted them online. And they had a really fun roundtable interview with the director, the writer, and all the principal actors, with the exception of the guy that played Lazarevich. Pretty much everybody else was in there. Robert Atkin Downs, Nolan North, Emily Fisher, Claudia Black, Steve Valentine, and Richard McGonigal, who played Sullivan. Everybody, they had, and it was just so funny because they talked about some of the great stuff it took, like how Claudia got the role. And she said, well, I had to, I knew it was Nolan North that was going to have the role because when I brought it, she's saying that when she came in, she knew she had to impress Nolan North because he was already cast. So because they were casting her for a second movie, he had already been cast, but she knew that she had to have good chemistry with him. And Nolan North said, oh yeah, that's great, because you were the one girl that actually did your interview topless, and I thought that was so great. And I think that's also what contributed to the camaraderie of how great the game turned out and how great the Uncharted games have come out, because they said the actors were having a blast. And you can even tell in some movies that some people hate. Like, I don't know, for some odd reason, a lot of people hate the movie Judge Dredd. I don't hate it. I don't think it's a great movie, but I don't hate it. And you can tell that everyone was having a blast making it. Maybe not Max von Sydow, because he was certainly very professional. Of course, he's like one of the most professional actors of all time. But Armand Desante and even Stallone looked like they were just having an absolute blast. They really did. And this was certainly true in the Uncharted games. And for Uncharted 2, when I finally did pick it up, I had pre-ordered it, but I couldn't pick up the pre-order day one because I just didn't have the funding to. A friend actually bought it for me in advance, and I paid him back for it. I think he got it out of like a 2 for 3 deal kind of thing. No, 3 for 2 deal. And later on, there was a different store that was having a 3 for 2 deal, and yeah, I told him you can get whatever you want for the number 3. So I paid him back in that respect. So he got a game, and I later paid him back with a game of equal value, whatever he wanted. And I had a blast with it. In fact, if you actually go really deep into my YouTube archives on my YouTube channel, you'll actually find that I actually reviewed the game a couple of years ago when I was just starting out with figuring out what I was going to do with that YouTube channel. One of the first things I ever did for the YouTube channel was release that video, the music video I did, which probably has almost got about 300,000 hits. And I just left it alone for a couple of years, not really releasing too much for it. And then I figured, why not do a review of Uncharted 2? And I did, and I actually did enjoy the game tremendously. I thought there were some problems with it, and I know that Yahtzee actually, I did my review before Yahtzee got to it. And actually some of the stuff I complained about was stuff that he complained about also. There was another guy that was also complaining about the game, but all of his opinions about it were completely wrong. I think the only complaints that were being released before I posted my video was that the guys was complaining. There was a guy online that was complaining that there were unvaried puzzles, and it was tough to find just where you were supposed to be going in the levels. I didn't think the game had that problem at all, so I don't know where the heck that guy was coming from. My problems all stemmed in the fact of, and this is a problem with all the Uncharted games, was the cover system. Trying to get it just wasn't smooth. I didn't think that ducking undercover was smooth. Like I'd be aimed at from like 3,000 yards away with perfect accuracy, trying for like the love of God to duck behind something or to jump down or something like that. And the game just, no matter how many times I hit that button, he just wouldn't duck. And don't get me started on the train sequence. On the train sequence, fun sequence, great sequence, but I'd be on the edge of the train sequence trying to duck behind like a doorway, and it would just jump me over. It would just mean the game character would interpret that as, okay, I want to climb over the ledge of the train, which equals death. So if I had one complaint about the game, it was the ducking mechanics, and I don't think they ever got fixed. I played the game. I don't know. Maybe my body just isn't attuned to how that game wants me to to treat the cover system, but I definitely know the cover system was done well because Gears of War did it really well. But other than that, I thought the game was fantastic. I thought the second game was fantastic. I loved the story tremendously. I loved how it ended. That little banter between Emily Rose and Nolan North at the very end, just before the credits blurred out, was, I don't know. I'd like to know. And Nolan North, if you're listening to this, please post a comment if that was actually written or you just went on. And you were just, if you just, like, guys were just told, okay, you got 2 minutes, just talk. I really would like to know. Emily Rose, by all means, please, post a comment. Did you have a script? Or did you just, like, say, okay, you got 2 minutes, just talk? Because I really want to know the answer to that question. Again, I won't want to spoil anything, but you guys, if you haven't played through the ending of Uncharted 2, look it up online and just listen to that dialogue he has and tell me what you think. There was also a great sequence that was shown at E3 2009, which was about, I think they showed the city, the urban city for the first time, and the zip lining and everything else, and there was a really cool action sequence that they showed for E3. I thought that was a really good choice, because when they showed it off at E3, it was very different than what we saw before, so it was new footage, certainly, and it was very different than what we had seen in previous Uncharted game. Like, the previous Uncharted game really didn't do urban environments, it did jungle environments and caves and caverns and stuff like that. There really wasn't too much in the urban, or the just housing is, how do I put this, city. You didn't see cities. You didn't see like environments from the the top and stuff like that. You were seeing old ancient stuff that were built in the middle of nowhere and left forgotten, kind of thing. So I liked that a lot in the demo, and it made for a cool action set piece to show to the E3 crowd. So big props to whoever makes the decisions for the E3 showing, because they've made the right decision every time. And I'm going to talk about when Uncharted 3 comes out. I'll talk about that E3 showing. So Uncharted 2 comes out. I start playing it. I'm loving every second of it. I platinum it. I remember platinuming it and being pretty proud of that too. However, I thought the multiplayer, while good, was not, how do I put this? I liked the multiplayer, but it wasn't enough to keep me playing it. I think I got bored after just a couple of levels or something like that. I unlocked a bunch of stuff. I made a bunch of levels, but for the most part, I didn't really play too much. Certainly not as much as I played the single player. I must have played through the single player like 4 or 5 times easy. And that was just on every difficulty. I played through the game on pretty much every difficulty except for very easy. And I think I remembered replaying it like a bunch of times just on easy. Just as, victory laps kind of thing. And I've done the same thing for Uncharted. I must have played the first Uncharted game like easily 5 times. I just loved the single player campaign so much. So after all that said, Uncharted 2 ends, and there's some talk that maybe that's the end of the series, because it's kind of had a nice conclusive ending. Could they have ended it there? Yeah, I think so. Okay, and we get to the latest Uncharted game announcement, Uncharted 3. Now, the cool thing about Uncharted 3 was that it was actually announced within a pretty short span of time between the announcement and when they were going to finally release it. However, almost with the announcement came tons and tons of content almost immediately. They showed within a very short span of time not only the announcement trailer showing that they were going to be in a desert, they also had a live gameplay demo on the Conan O'Brien show where they showed the chateau sequence for the first time. And at one point, pretty close to that, they also showed one of the opening cinematics of the game. Not the opening cinematic, but a very close opening cinematic. Like, I think it was at the end of the first chapter of the game. That cinematic, which introduced the bad guy or I should say the bad woman of the game. Now, everyone who had played the first Uncharted games were really, really salivating over this last one, because the service had been so good, the series had been just so fantastic, that it had become, at that point, a staple of the Sony Playstation, and by all means was absolutely anticipated. Right after Uncharted 2's immense success, Uncharted 2 did far, far, far better than the first Uncharted game did, it, both in critical acclaim and in sales, and I think the multiplayer probably had something to do with that. I think that the reason why everyone liked Uncharted 2 better than Uncharted 1 was because the story was more polished, the gameplay was more polished than the second game, but also the multiplayer was in Uncharted 2, and there was no multiplayer in the first Uncharted game. This was going to be very interesting because with Uncharted 3, everyone knew that they had perfected it in Uncharted 2, and it was going to be absolutely, absolutely phenomenal. Now, as things progressed, the announcement of another multiplayer beta started coming through, and I believe, if I remember correctly, they were releasing multiplayer beta keys with the Infamous 2 game when that got released. That was around the time when Infamous was under development and it was about to be released. They made the announcement that there was going to be an Uncharted 3 beta, and you would have to anybody who had a copy of Infamous 2 would be able to have access to it. They also gave it out to people who were members of the PlayStation Plus service, and I think there was even a random drawing of like different beta keys through various PlayStation members. Like they were, because I think I remembered I got an extra key at some point. I'm fairly certain I got an extra key at some point. So there was that. And what was so cool about it was that they expanded what was going on with the game service. So it was more. It had better graphics. It looked better. It had just awesome direction when it came down to the sand motions and stuff like that for the desert environments. But again, even with everything that was shown, we didn't know what was going on with the game series as a whole. In particular, even though we knew Sully was going to be back, because all the gameplay segments they showed early on all had Sully in them. In fact, actually, they had interviews with Nolan North and Richard McGarnagle. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't remember how he pronounces his. I'm sorry, Richard. I really am. You're a fantastic actor. You're really awesome in interviews, but I can't remember how to pronounce your last name. I think it's McGarnagle. In fact, alongside the announcement trailer for the third game, there was a God, I don't know how to put this. A documentary included with the alongside the trailer on the PlayStation Network, which detailed what went into making that first trailer. And there were interviews with the actors, the game developers, and everything else. It was a really well made just documentary. In fact, actually, the documentary was labeled Part 1 of 2, but the game has been released. I haven't seen the second part. I don't think anyone's seen the second part of this documentary. I know Two Player Productions worked on it because they put their company logo on it. I think I've also seen them release documentaries through, like, I think Infamous. They did one for Infamous also. That was, I only found it on Game Trailers. I hadn't seen GameTrailers.com. I never would have found it. But yeah. Where's the second part? You said there was going to be a second part. Where's the second part of that? Was there a falling out or something? I don't know. It was a great documentary. I really wanted to see the second part. So there was that. So more content gets released, and starts to be talk about the beta. Now the cool thing was that the Sony booths around the time of E3 were going to be showing Uncharted 3. And just like with the previous Uncharted game, Uncharted 3 had an E3 showing at the E3 press conference for Sony. They showed the cruise ship level. And once again, just like what they did with the last game, I think they made a really, really good decision to show that level. Because that is an awesome level that really showed off just how cool they could possibly make the game. It was a really high bar and a really well-made level. So they chose to show that. However, disappointingly, I went to E3 that year. And while Uncharted 3 did have a showing there, the only thing they actually included and showed at the E3 event as playable was the multiplayer segments. And by that point, I was already a part of the Uncharted 3 beta test. I didn't, it just didn't interest me to play it when I knew I was going to be playing the same thing very, very, very soon. I would have been interested had they had some demo units set up with the same demo that they included with the E3 press conference, but they didn't. They only had the multiplayer demos up. So at the Sony press conference, I checked out a few games, but Uncharted was not one of them. However, I was disappointed in that because I really was hoping that they were going to have demos set up for the single player. I mean, they did with Resistance. Resistance 3 had, I think, about the same amount of demo units set up in Sony's booth. And I think they had half of them devoted to single player and half of them devoted to multiplayer. And a few, like maybe about 4 separate units in a different area of the booth set up for the PlayStation Move system. So that was kind of unusual, I thought. It would have been nice to have been able to demo single player. I mean, Resistance did it. Resistance had it. So I get back from E3, and Infamous 2 is out by that point. It's kind of funny because Infamous, just like with the first Infamous game, only comes out during the E3 event. So if you're at E3, you're going to be missing out on Infamous because it releases at the same time. That having been said, there was an Infamous showing. I'm sorry, there was an Infamous 2 showing at E3 that year. They had the release trailer with it. They were showing the release trailer at the booth, but I don't think there was any demos because the game had been finished by that point. The game was done. So I get in on the Uncharted 3 beta, and the cool thing was that, I don't know if I'm sure everyone has already played because the game is out, so Uncharted 3 is out, so if I give you previews of what I remember from the Uncharted beta, it's kind of obsolete information. But they were going for some very interesting things. Customizable characters, for one. So I thought, here's a step in the right direction. It kind of felt a bit, I don't know how I felt about it. It kind of felt a bit better than the Uncharted than Uncharted 2. It felt improved over Uncharted 2. But I was still holding off judgment because I'm not really that much of a multiplayer fan, even though I do play multiplayer. If I find myself playing multiplayer and enjoying it, I will continue with it. But for the most part, I'm more of a single player. And what really interested me in Uncharted was the single player. So the announcement comes that there's going to be an Uncharted 3 Special Edition. This excited a lot of people, particularly because there hadn't really been an official sale of any special editions for the Uncharted series by that point, even though it was a major Sony property. Uncharted 2, quote-unquote, had a special edition, but it was special in the case that you couldn't get it in stores. The only way you could get it was in contests, and let me tell you, yeah, good luck. If you got one, you're damn lucky, because I sure as hell didn't. I think a lot of people were probably very disappointed about that. They had a replica. I heard they had a replica Purba with that. That sounds awesome. As well as a lot of unlock codes for like some of the pre-order stuff and some of the codes for currency, codes for gold armor, and gold weapons, stuff like that. So there was all that. Now, for Uncharted 3, there were certainly people taking pre-orders for the Collector's Edition and everything else. But this Collector's Edition seemed very interesting to me because they were including some really cool stuff with it. They were including a collectible statue, which has kind of become a bit more, kind of mainstream with a lot of these games. So they were including that. They were including a replica belt buckle of the belt buckle that Nathan Drake used. They were putting it all in a cool-looking case, and they were including a replica of Francis Drake's ring. That alone had me sold. That really did. And I looked online not too long ago. Either people made replicas or they're basically reselling the replica rings that they had from the collector's edition. Those are getting pretty hefty prices online. I mean, it really does. People like that ring. It would have been nice if they had made it a silver, because Drake's ring was clearly stated in the games that Francis Drake's ring was made out of silver. I fairly certainly made the collector's ring out of steel. I think there's one guy out there that I was doing a search online just to see if anybody could, like, let's say, create me a version of that ring with in silver. Be it, take the one that I've got and create a new type of copy just out of silver, like using maybe some type of wax mold or something like that. But it turns out somebody already did all that, and they're actually selling a silver version of that ring that they made themselves, and I thought that was interesting. And if I ever get the money together to spend, I would certainly get it. If anybody has done that in the past, please leave a comment, because I really would like to know how reputable the guy is. I'm not saying I distrust him, but I am saying if anybody does have any comments about, like, let's say they know what I'm talking about, by all means post a comment, and I'll find out. So after all that's being said, what did I think of the third game after picking it up? Well, I love the collector's edition, and by the way, on my YouTube channel, there's an unboxing of the collector's edition, so you can see exactly what's in there. It was fantastic. I remember seeing the reviews of it were saying, like, before the game came out, there were a lot of reviews, and they all said the game wasn't as polished as Uncharted 2 was. Like, maybe like they had lost some of the shine from, that Uncharted 2 had. And I didn't have any of those problems that the reviewers were complaining about. I don't know if they had beta versions or something, and they were complaining about the bugginess of beta versions, or maybe the game had been patched so quickly that by the time I put the disc in, that they'd fixed the problems that some of the reviewers were complaining about. I don't know. But I had no major serious control problems or bug problems. I had a crash once, but I think it had to do with, I think there was a bug in my PlayStation firmware, because I had, what do you call it, enabled? I had something enabled, remote play. I had remote play enabled. And I was noticing crashing along all my my games, but when I turned it off, the crashing stopped. So I was more apt to call that a bug in the firmware or on in the game itself than an actual crash. And the PlayStation's fine, so it was likely just a crash bug. No big deal. The hardware's fine. So after all that being said and done, what did I think of just everything about everything about the game, everything about that? I thought the co-op was really, really awesome for Uncharted 3. I thought they really improved on the co-op system. In fact, it felt like a miniature campaign, actually, where they took some of the famous maps from, like, some of the earlier games in the current game and created co-op levels and a co-op story out of it. That really was interesting. I thought the story was great, too, although I did think that Chloe Fraser and the new guy that they brought in, the God, I can't remember what the guy's name is. I think it was Charlie or something like that. The big guy who was afraid of confined spaces. I thought that they were kind of underused. I thought that they were I thought that they were interesting for the parts of the game that they were in, but it would have been nice to have them continue with the game. But I think that the story just didn't permit them to continue on with the game. It's just in game. However, I thought that Chloe definitely had a great scene. I don't know if this was Claudia Black's doing or if this was just something that was in the script, where they said they had to go to France or Syria, and Chloe just raises her hand and goes and oh God, Drake says, "No, you're not going to France." Like he knew she was gonna say, "I want to go to France. Take me to France." And he's like, "No, I'm going to France, not you." So I thought that was kind of funny and cute. So that was a great moment. I thought it had a great series, and I thought that the flashbacks early on were just awesome. I thought that the whole flashback levels and the story of the young Drake first meeting Victor Sullivan was a great decision to include in the game. I really like that a lot, and I'm glad that they included that, because I know a lot of people were really curious about that. That having been said, I'm sure I had a few questions about the story. In particular, what the hell happened with Drake and Elena in between the second and third game? It kind of hints that they were married and they split, but there was never any reason why. We never find out why. Now, we just don't. He only says at one point is that he's sorry, but that could mean like a million things. And I don't know if that's like, I'm not going to claim bad writing or bad storytelling, but I am going to say that it does kind of come off like, if you don't say what it is, that you just don't know. You didn't know what to put there. If you at least hint at something, then it comes off as kind of interesting. Because, like, for Halo, for example, there was so much left up to the player to discover for themselves with the first Halo game, but there was enough of it. There was enough tidbits sprinkled over the course of the game that you could figure out what the backstory was. It didn't happen with Gears of War. Gears of War, they had a full backstory, but it was never really related, at least not the first one. The second and third one, those were fine. You could tell the backstory with those. But the first game's backstory was never really made clear. If I had one gripe about the game, it was just that story was left unclear. But other than that, I thought it was a fantastic game. I really liked the cooperative. The final version of the multiplayer was disappointing. I started playing that a little bit last night, and I just had my rear end handed to me. Now that is obviously because I was a really bad player, put on a really bad team up against a clan. But the truth is that the clan was up to like level 70, level 80, and I was like level 8. They had way too much of an advantage. Even at the end of the game, they had far, even with all the stuff that the game did in order to quote unquote even the teams out. It still didn't. It was not. It was just not. There was just no evenness. You really there. That's a matchmaking issue as far as I'm concerned. There's no excuse for matching up level 8 characters with level 70 actually allowing characters to be that high a level in the first place and be that powerful. I mean, that was really overkill. So I'm not going to be playing any more competitive multiplayer. This is not happening. Cooperative, I had a lot of fun with. I had a lot of fun playing the co-op campaign. I must have played like 4 levels of co-op, and I enjoyed that tremendously. I thought that was a lot of fun. So I did like that quite a bit. So what is to go further? You know, if I can, usually I kind of lend the last part of these podcasts to what is coming in the future, what I think is coming in the future with the series. Well, we all know that there's going to be an Uncharted game for the PlayStation Vita. That's been confirmed. Heck, I played it. I forgot to mention, actually, this year at E3, not only did they have Uncharted 3 on display at the PlayStation booth, they also had the Uncharted Golden Abyss game, which is coming to the PlayStation Vita, demoable at the PlayStation Vita booth. Now, I must have blown my entire Sunday. I'm sorry, my entire Friday. Was it Friday? No, Thursday. I blew the third day completely of waiting in line for hours and hours and hours to get a chance to use the PlayStation Vita. And you know what? I thought that was time well spent because I got a hands-on that after hours of waiting. And let me tell you, that thing worked really well. I found myself enjoying it. Not only did I get to play PlayStation Vita a version of Uncharted, but I also got to play the Vita version of Little Big Planet, Little Deviants, a few other things. So it wasn't just that, but I certainly had, if there were 2 games which I would probably say that I thought worked the best on the PlayStation Vita, it was probably Little Big Planet and Uncharted. And out of those 2, I would say my favorite was certainly the Uncharted game. And the reason why was because the controls that they were going for, particularly with the platforming, were fantastic for the touchscreen. And with the 6-axis controls, it was it was just so awesome to be able to move the controls or tilt the controls to make Drake tilt, or move the touchscreen to make Drake touch, and to make Drake jump from ledge to ledge, kind of thing. Really, really fluid. I remember way back in like the first version of the Uncharted, well, the very first Uncharted game, I don't know if a lot of people know this because, let's face it, nobody uses it anymore, but there's actually some motion control in the PlayStation 3 controller. It does make use of some motion control systems. Games way back when the system launched, that was like before vibration. A lot of games were designed around that, like that's a little Baby Ducks game, which was so cute, on the PlayStation Network, or Super Rub-a-Dub or something, and some other games actually. Lair was originally designed to basically entirely use that functionality. The problem is that the functionality that they were using them for were not as useful as just having the analog stick. The analog stick was far more precise. That having been said, though, there are still some uses you can have for that motion sensor technology, but really developers aren't using it anymore. It's good to see that they're making proper usage of it with the PlayStation Vita. So I'm really looking forward to that. Don't know if I'll get a PlayStation Vita, but if anybody wants me to, they can hit up my site and check out my Amazon wishlist page. It's listed on there. hey, if somebody does actually like anything on those sites, it's literally just a list of games, a bunch of handheld stuff, and maybe some hardware. Nothing too outrageous or too too crazy or something like that. But if anybody wants me to if there's something that they want me to review, if there's something that they want me to check out or hear my thoughts on it, unbox or something like that, you can hit up my Amazon wish page. If I get anything from that, I would in a heartbeat do unboxing, review, everything. Just as a thank you to it's literally, as far as I'm concerned, the least I could do for anybody that would that visited the page. So just throwing that out there. I probably will get a PlayStation Vita, but certainly not at first. I'm probably going to wait a while on that. But if there was some PlayStation Vita games that I was immediately looking forward to, and would be day one purchases, would probably be the Uncharted game, the Resistance game, although I don't know if that's a launch game, and Little Big Planet. Again, I don't know if that's a launch game, but I'm fairly certain the Uncharted game is. Fairly certain, heck, probably pretty certain Little Big Planet and Resistance are, but I'm not. Don't quote me on those. I'm also really looking forward to Sound Shapes, but that's not going to be a launch game. Really had a lot of fun playing that on the PlayStation Vita at E3. Really disappointed it did not make launch and will not make launch on the PlayStation Network. But it's just sometimes these things happen. So thank you so much for listening. I know I also spend the very last time talking about what I'm going to be doing next. Well, I found that over the last couple of podcasts when I have been mentioning what I'm going to be doing next, while it has motivated me to do the podcasts, it's also limited what I can do. Like, I'll make the decision on the spot about what I'm going to do, and then I'll start playing something else and want to do a different type of topic and have to save that for the next podcast. So what I'm not going to say next what I'm going to do, but be rest assured that more podcasts will be coming. I love doing them, and I love hearing your responses to them. So by all means, post a comment about the podcast, and I would be more than happy to respond to it. Thanks for listening, guys. This is Maniac with GameAccess.net. Over and out.